Alcohol has been in America since, well, before it was ever called America. Alcoholism has been a documented topic in this country since colonial times. By the late 19th century, there had been a long revival of the dry movement led by groups like the Women's Christian Temperance Movement and the Prohibition Party. These groups claimed that there needed to be an end to the out-of-control behavior, health risks, and plain old drunken debauchery that ensues because of alcohol. As the groups opposing the use of alcohol mounted and their voices became stronger, they were finally heard, and the United States government was listening. On January 16, 1920, Congress ratified the 18th Amendment to the Constitution, prohibiting the sale, use, manufacturing, or transportation of alcohol. The National Prohibition Act, better known as the Volstead Act, was enacted to carry out the amendment. The bill was named after Andrew Volstead, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, who managed the legislation. Interestingly, President of the United States, Woodrow Wilson, vetoed the bill. However, his veto was overridden by the House the same day. The Volstead Act had three functions. First, to prohibit intoxicating beverages. Second, to regulate the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquor. And finally, it was to promote its use in scientific research and in other lawful industries and practices such as religious rituals. Some of the effects of prohibition were predictable. Direct distilling and home brewing became a common industry. However, other consequences were not foreseen. With the manufacturers and legitimate businessmen of alcohol out of business, a new market opened for criminals. The fact remained that even though it was illegal, people still wanted their booze. Cities like New York, Chicago, Detroit, and Atlantic City became hubs for the underground alcohol business. This new illegal industry allowed mobsters like John Torrio, Charles Lucky Luciano, and Arnold Rothstein to prosper. Perhaps the most famous or infamous gangster of them all was Al Capone. He ran an empire in Chicago that was estimated to take in over $100 million a year. Under Capone's control were distilleries, gambling houses, brothels, and speakeasies. The fact that the mobsters controlled business meant that violence was a significant part of the equation. Whoever was the most feared was the most powerful. On one occasion, on February 14, 1929, 6 members of Bugs Moran's gang were killed on the orders of rival Al Capone. The men that committed the murders were all posing as police officers. Another outcome of Prohibition was speakeasies. They were usually high-class establishments that illegally sold alcohol. They often offered food and entertainment. It was estimated that New York City alone had over 50,000 speakeasies. The splendor that had represented the era of the Roaring Twenties and the Jazz Age was being washed away in the war on alcohol. It was a war that the government was losing. Prohibition was technically regulated nationally, but most of the time it was up to the greatly outnumbered and low-paid prohibition agents, commonly known as prohibs, to enforce the Volstead Act. The low-paying wages made it easy for prohibs to be bribed by the gangsters. Corruption was even reached by the United States government, as many politicians had their hands in the alcohol business. Bootlegging and alcohol consumption was so prevalent that many states turned a blind eye to it. The state of Maryland actually never enforced the law, saying it infringed on the state's rights. There were many reasons why prohibition didn't last. Many people felt that the government was taking away their freedom of choice. Also, crime had become much more rampant. There were not enough agents to enforce the law. There were only 1,500 agents nationally. On December 5, 1933, Congress officially gave up on the fight to prohibit the use of alcohol. The 21st Amendment of the United States ratified the 18th, legalizing the private ownership and consumption of alcohol. The 13-year attempt to stop the ill effects that can be caused by alcohol use was a valid attempt by many. However, it proved to be too difficult to regulate in the end. Mark Twain is famously quoted as saying, "Prohibition only drives drunkenness behind closed doors and in dark places, and does not cure or even diminish it." Prohibition officially ended on April 7, 1933. And on April 8, 1933, Anheuser-Busch Incorporated sent a team of Clydesdale horses to deliver a case of Budweiser to the White House. In the end, those that attempted to enforce prohibition did so with honorable intentions. However, the passing of the 18th Amendment and the Volstead Act were not something that the American people chose to enforce. Though short-lived, prohibition will be forever remembered in